G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the ones that are going to bring you value in your draft Keeper Leagues. My name's Hef and I'm joined by my co-host Kays. How are you, mate?
Good evening, Hef. I'm well, yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Did you have a good weekend, mate? I guess your Super Bowl team, your NFL team won the Super Bowl yesterday. So
didn't they ever?
My
Bucks.
You're a lifelong fan, I hear, Kays. You always followed them. You never miss a game.
I never miss a Bucks game.
Nah, never. You're always talking about them. Can you just run us through like your top five?
Top five ever players?
No. Currently that are played yesterday.
There's Cam Brate. There's that guy called Tom Brady.
That aren't Tom Brady. Surely that's the obvious
Gronk.
one.
Who else is there? My boy, Pierre-Paul, and then David. Don't forget about the defensemen. You know, they're important.
Okay.
But, you know, I've been lifelong. Like, I'm back in the Joey Galloway days, you know. Jameis Winston went through that period. Chris Sims, one of the greats of all time. You know, like, there's plenty of fantastic Bucks players that have been forgotten over the years.
All right, I'll let you
I'll
let you pass this time, mate. That's fine.
Thank you.
Did you watch it?
It was on in the background of work. As I said, the only reason I like the Bucks is because I played them when I had Madden and stuff like that. And then it was just horrible because no one ever asks you, like, who's your NFL team?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, Tom Brady's going to the Buccaneers. And it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. Now no one's actually going to believe me that I do actually like mildly followed the Bucks. It was horrible.
Well, that's the reason why I just wanted to bring it up. You actually probably did a better job than I could of naming five players. I think Antonio Brown's one. Yeah. Someone else you missed as well. Fournette. Another one there.
Gronk.
I think you said Gronk. Yeah. Anyway, I used to be right into it, but when I had a kid, there was no more getting up at 3 a.m. To actually watch.
You've got to be committed.
Anymore, so.
You've got to be committed to.
I used to be, but
need Mondays off as
it's
well.
way too hard to keep up with it that time of day. Anyway, Super Bowl was good. I went to the highway and watched that. But speaking of the Bucks.
Buds.
Yeah, there was a few buds. I was asleep by 8:30 on my son's bedroom floor. But anyway.
There's a story there, listeners.
No, I was just putting him to bed and I fell asleep. Anyway, speaking of the Bucks, we had your Bucks show on the weekend, Kays. Kays is getting married for those who haven't heard yet or picked up on it on the pod. So
I am slowly recovering.
Pretty
big,
busy
big
month
day.
for you, mate. But,
it is. It's been a big month.
I was very hungover, very hungover on Sunday, but luckily I drank some Remedy kombucha, wild berry kombucha,
nice
and that got me over my hangover. So
I haven't tried this one yet.
The ultimate hangover cure. Neither have I.
Secret sound.
Actually, yeah. I'm sure you're surprised I haven't drank a case of it yet, but no, this is the first time I've had it. But yeah, it got me through my hangover, the Remedy kombucha, so it's good, definitely.
I did see that Remedy are now available at Zambrero stores too, which is fantastic. So,
well, they should be available anyway.
Look, if Zambreros want to get on board the pod, I'd be more than happy to eat a burrito each time we go to air.
I would be the size of a house if that happened, but the rate I drink the Remedy kombucha, I think...
You can have one of those healthy bowls.
if we were sponsored by Zambreros, I reckon I'd be in strife.
Just a quick one on my Buck show, like... Usually, as the Buck, you're the centre of attention on the day. But there were people coming up to you at Pirate Life, at the pub, just asking for autographs. Like
that
Hollywood
Hef. That is a lie.
You've hit AFL.com and there are people, they want signatures, they want photos. It was just like one-way traffic, and I was just sitting there, just quietly going about business, and everyone just wanted Hollywood Hef. So
your brother-in-law came up and introduced himself, and he's like, "Oh, g'day, Hef from the Keeper League podcast," and I was like, "Oh shit, am I being recognised for the first time
and
here?"
You would have been the most excited bloke on the planet.
I was like, I don't actually know how to handle this. Like, and then he told me he actually knew who I was anyway. So yeah, he told me he was actually on the Bucks, so it was all good. Anyway, we had another article. Speaking of Hollywood Hef, another one came out today on the AFL website. So if you're keen to have a read of that, some tips there on some league settings that we would recommend, or at least recommend you thinking about if you're starting up a Keeper League.
It's always good to get those kind of thoughts moving around your group. If you've got your core group together of coaches, and go through them, make sure everyone's happy, and that's the good start to a good Keeper League.
All right, tonight, Kays, we're going to be looking at Port Adelaide, Richmond and St Kilda. Before anyone kind of asks, the reason why there's no rookies in these analyses is because we've already done a whole show dedicated to rookies earlier in the year for our members. So if you're keen to get involved in that, jump on our membership page on our website and sign up, and you'll get all our rookie stuff along with all the draftee fantasy numbers as well from the VFL guys, the TAC Cup guys are from 2019. What is it called now? NAB League from 2019, but then all the Waffle and SA guys will have their 2020 numbers up there as well. But yeah, when we talk about draft, we talk about in an established Keeper League, not in your first draft. So if we say draft early on, someone like Peter Laddams, we don't mean take him in the first few rounds of your actual startup draft. It's later on in the draft.
Yeah, I think top up draft. Yes.
All right, so we might as well get stuck into it. I've got 40 Port Adelaide players to get through.
Seriously, guys. I'm going to go through my best 22, then go have a lie down for about an hour. So,
all right, let's get stuck into it. All right, on to the Port Adelaide Football Club, my favourite team.
beloved. Oh, just a quick question. When are you going to get a manager?
What do you mean?
Like, because you're basically famous now.
Can't you just be my manager?
I don't know if I'm that clever.
You got enough time on your hands to do it?
I don't know. Maybe on the side. We'll talk about this later.
All right, cool. We'll
But
work out some
anyway,
sort of commission.
we will. At least 20%.
Yeah, 20%. 20% of zero is
Done.
Yeah, cool.
Rightio. For the Port Adelaide best 22 backline, Tommy Cleary, Tommy Jonas, and Darcy Byrne-Jones. Then Hamish Hartlett, Alir, and Ryan Burton, with Carl Amon, Tom Rockcliffe, and Xavier Dersma on the wing. We've got Robbie Gray, Todd Marshall, and Connor Rosie up forward, with Zach Butters, Charlie Dixon, and Orazio Fantasia. Followers, Scott Lysett, Trav Boak, and Ollie Wines. Interchange of Sam Powell-Pepper, Lockie Jones, Dan Houston, and Pete Laddams, which leaves the emergencies of Mitch Georgiadis, Trent McKenzie, Stevie Motlop, the Elite, and Riley Bonner. How did I do, Hef? You are the number one Port supporter.
Now,
pick it apart.
First of all, I'm offended and appalled that you left out the cannon.
I do love
What the
cannon.
hell?
I do
Where's
love
the cannon?
Look, if you want to have Alir back there, I think that's the replacement.
I reckon you probably could make a case for dropping Cleary after some of his
Potentially.
some of his performances late last year, but I think he is a Hinkley favourite, so I don't know if he does get dropped. But in all honesty, I think you've done pretty well with that side. That was the only kind of thing I could see who played, every game last year, and he was missing. And then we take Alir, but I see Alir maybe as kind of that replacement for Cleary because we needed some actual genuine height. But again, I don't think Cleary does get dropped either, though. So,
that's fair.
Yeah.
I can see that. The other one that we in our group chat, someone thought that Orazio playing over Stevie Motlop was a bit crazy.
Actually, I didn't actually think of that too because he was an elite player in the Champion Data rankings. So, so I didn't think about that one. That's a bit of an interesting one too. But I do think Orazio has been brought in to play a specific role up forward just to kind of release Connor Rosie as well. So we'll talk about that a bit more later. But no, I think you're actually pretty bang on. Stevie Motlop was in and out last year anyway. And then the Cannon played every game. But I think you can make a case for it. One of those defenders has got to make way.
There's a soft spot for the Cannon.
Yeah.
So, look, it wouldn't surprise me, but I think they'll be very, very strong there with Alir this year.
Yeah. All right, let's get stuck into some players.
Righty, I'll kick it off. I'll start with Mitch Georgiades. I did really want to sneak the big King George Whiting into my best 22 this year, but just missed out. Be pretty close to replacing Todd Marshall if he runs out of form, I think, because big fan of Big Mitch. Look, I think he's actually going to be one of the more exciting tall forwards in the comp, and I can see him jumping into that best 22 in no time at all. Look, he kicked a snag in 5 of his 7 games last year and did have a haul of 3 goals against the D's, where he also put up a 72.90 BCV game. So very, very nice outing in your first year of footy. I just really like the way he moved, and impressively, he lays a lot of tackles for a big fella. He actually had 14 tackles in 7 games, which is a lot better than some small forwards, actually. So I love the way that he gets about it, gets good off the ground, and obviously happy to do the hard work as well, which I do love. Always seemed to find himself in dangerous spots and was actually a pretty good lead-up target at times too. But obviously still young and raw, but it was really great to see him get a crack at it in his first year, especially after not really playing any footy in his final year of being a junior. So basically that was his first kind of footy in a couple years. So he's one that's only going to get better as he puts in a bit more size, gets a bit of that fitness base up. I'm keen to draft him this year, mid to late. There's genuine upside for me. I think 2022 is really where he's going to come into that third year in the system. But I do have a lot of time for the big fish. What do you think, mate?
Yeah, I don't mind him. I do think he's got a lot of athletic flair and ability, and can be dangerous around the goals. I just worry, Charlie Dixon's into the twilight of his career, so he'll play as the third tall, which I don't hate him as a fantasy scorer. As the Port's third tall generally seems to score okay. Like the Westhoff kind of roamed a bit, and he does have that kind of maybe not the aerobic ability to move around like Westhoff does, but he does have a bit of flair up forward.
Yeah,
and he is a taller type as well. He's not huge. I think he's only 185 or something like that, but 189, something like that. But he's not like a 200 centimeters like Westhoff. But yeah, the thing I worry about is if Charlie Dixon does retire in the next 3-4 years, does he play just as a stay-at-home key forward, taking the best defender type thing, which I don't think really suited to him. So I think Port need to do something in terms of recruitment and making sure they get another key forward to kind of take the weight off him in future. But there's potential there for sure. I just worry worry about the role he'll have to play in future. That's all.
Yeah, I'm keen. It's just going to be interesting to see. Like, I think Marshall and him together over, a extended period of time are going to be really good for the club. So just to see kind of where their bodies develop. But I think he's got lots of tricks and one I'm keen on.
Definitely got tricks, that's for sure. One of the favourites of the listeners, I think, throughout the off-season, that's Zach Butters.
Many questions about him.
A lot of people are talking about Zach Butters. Now, it was a bit of a breakout season for him. He averaged 62.3, which is 77.7 BCV from 15 games in 2020. I think he got suspended for a few of them. He's a bit of a rough nut there towards the end. But
unit.
He was up from the 56.7 average in 2019. So that's a 20.3 BCV uptick in his fantasy scoring last year. So that's a pretty big turnaround from where he was. He had some great scores throughout the years. He had 114 versus the Crows, which was 142.5 BCV, 97 versus the Bulldogs, that's 121, and then 85 versus the Lions, which was 106.3. But he also did have some lean scores as well, a few 40s and stuff. And I think he might have had a 30 at one stage as well. But he was pretty consistent across the board. A lot of coaches are really expecting big things. I'm a little bit skeptical, and that's purely because I just think his role as a pressure forward is just so vital to Port Adelaide. He's that kind of guy who just runs amok up the forward line, just chases tackles, does all the little things, little one percenters. Yes, he does move into the midfield and run through there a little bit, but I think it's just so valuable to actually have him pressuring the ball inside our forward 50, especially because we know that's part of Port Adelaide's game plan. They are so adamant on keeping the ball inside forward 50. So I think he plays a big part in that. If he comes out of that forward line, I think it's a loss to Port Adelaide overall. So I think he'll be good. I just don't know if he'll be an 100 plus average scorer, but I do think he'll be one of the better forwards over in the coming years. So I don't think he's going to be, break out into the midfield and become like a superstar like that, but I think he'll be like a Robbie Gray type or a Toby Green type scorer where you play out forward, pinch in the midfield, and you put up some pretty reasonable scores, but you can be a little bit inconsistent because you're up forward for some of the games as well. Look, he should be 2G 4P eventually, but and I think he's probably 2G 4P now in a lot of leagues. He's going to be kept in a lot of leagues, so I doubt he'll be available in too many, but if he is available, absolutely get on board because he's going to be a great forward option for years to come.
Yes. Now, I think we need to knock a question on the head that we've been getting a lot of over the pre-season as well. I need you as the Port aficionado in this group.
Hope I know the answer to this.
To rank Butters, Rosie, and Dersmar, because this is the big question. Because obviously you said that Fantasia comes in, he could be the one that just plays that role. All right, so if he does and he fills the role that these guys are playing last year, rank those three in terms of who's playing midfield first.
I think Rosie's playing midfield first. He's got the most genuine class out of those three. Then I'd probably have Butters second, just in terms of his grunt. And, Dersmar's already playing midfield, but he's playing on a wing.
Yep.
But in terms of fantasy scoring, I think it's probably going to go... Look, I still wouldn't even be surprised if it goes Rosie, Dersmar, then Butters, but they're all going to be very, very good, and they're going to be within points of each other. So I think kind of Rosie is going to be the best kind of balance between inside and outside. He's just got genuine awareness through traffic and all that sort of stuff, so he can actually get inside, kind of breakaway free. I think Butters is going to be more of the crash and bash type midfielder that we've already got kind of a dime a dozen of, but there's a few that will be moving on, like your Rockies and your Bokes and stuff like that. Whereas Dersmar's type, but he can also get on the end of a goal, so that's just why I think he'll be a little bit of a better scorer there.
So if Fantasia's fit and firing, does he aid Butters or Rosie's scoring more, or more sends them into midfield more?
I think it sends Rosie in the midfield. I think that's specifically why he's recruited.
That question has been answered, everyone.
Yeah. Oh, that's part of my Rosie write up here. So
sorry to jump ahead. It was like what viewer feedback do we have this week? Oh, we name the three Port guys and where they're going to go. So all right, I like that answer. I tend to agree. So nicely done. Ryan Burton is the next guy we'll cover here, and he's probably one of the more frustrating players in fantasy football, just because his best is exceptional, but the issue is he just never seems to be able to get on the park. Look, that 2017 year he had was just one of the best. Averaged 85 in his first full season of footy there. Had 3 tons. Then kind of found the old second year blues with a bad 2018, and just hasn't really been able to get back to the consistency and some of the big scores we saw in 2017. He only played the 6 games last year, but he did have scores of 79 and 86, which turned into 99s and 107s when we do the BCV calcs. But what was actually quite impressive is that 86 came from only 61% time on ground before getting injured. So can go big in a short amount of time. I'm a massive fan of Burton, and I was an owner up until last week, but just a couple of things worry me about his injuries. He's still not back with the main group, I believe, after reading some stuff from the Port media, and he just always seems to be having some kind of soft tissue injury, and that just seems to be year over for him, like last year. Look, I really hope he gets his body right, because I do rate him very highly, and I'm sure there's lots of fans and coaches out there hope he can get fit and fine this year. But he's just one of those guys, I can't bet on him playing 20 odd games like this year. You go like, yes, he could be an elite backman and an elite fantasy scorer, but like he might play 10 or 12 games and maybe miss the end of your season, that kind of thing. And that's my biggest worry. So I'll probably recommend as to what I did. If you need to keep him because he backs a low at light, keep him because he's got good numbers. But if you can afford to move him on like I could and did, I think that's what I'd be doing ahead of this preseason.
Yeah, I do agree in terms of you're just never going to get a full season out of him, or not for some time to come as well. That said, I wouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater just yet as well. I know you've traded him, so it's a bit different. But his potential is that big that he's probably worth keeping through this patch, because you never know. There's players like, so Hamish Hartley would always go through the shoulders and then he did a knee and stuff like that. When they do eventually come out on the other side, you're just always pretty upset if you miss out on that, I find.
Yeah.
But again, if you're punching for a flag like you say you are, despite holding those two terrible players that you said you would be playing, you probably don't want to have him on your side. That's all.
This decision was more about my back line. I've got Salem, Duggan, Bowes, and Mills back there. So like those four are young. Should be playing back for a long time. So that was more like I could probably afford to.
Who'd you get
to trade him? I got like a third round pick or something like that.
Ooh, okay. For the draft picks. Was it my third round pick that I traded away?
No, I don't know. But look, I kind of wanted to keep him, but at the same time, I didn't want to carry in too many defenders, and I have picked up Lockie Ash since, and I've got Ben Patton as a rookie. So I've got plenty of cover there. But yeah, he's just one of those ones I worry about. I do like him a lot, and it will probably come back to bite me, as most trades do in this league.
Yep, definitely. Especially with your trading history. But anyway, let's move on to Peter Laddam. So he's an interesting prospect with forward status. Not going to say great prospect, but an interesting prospect. He averaged 62.4, which is a 78 BCV last year. He had a top score of 104 last season, rucking against Tim English, who's absolutely garbage.
I'm going to get him on the pod, and then you're going to love him or something like that.
Also had 90, which is 112.5 BCV against Richmond, and an 85, which is 106.3 against the Blues. There's not many good ruckmen at the Blues either, nor Richmond, just thinking about it, or not at the time. The concern is that he only one of his big games, his big scores, was with Lycett in the side, and that was that 90 against Richmond. So he had scores of 56, 41, 28, 48, and 29 rucking with Lycett after he had that 90 against Richmond that I just mentioned. So he's really good around the ground. So that's where he gets his points as a ruckman, but he just doesn't win hit-outs. So that's how it actually occurs. When Lycett's fit, he just kind of sits up forward a lot more and doesn't really go into the ruck. But when Lycett was injured last year, he was playing in the ruck the whole time and just roaming around the ground and just kind of playing as like almost like another midfielder, racking up the kicks, but just not really impacting the ruck contest. And that was a real issue, because I think we dropped a game against St Kilda where Paddy Ryder just absolutely monstered us in the hit-outs, and our midfielders rely on first use. So I just can't see Peter Laddams getting the ruck time if Lycett is fit. He'll play mainly up forward, but he can be handy up forward. He looked good because he took a few grabs in one of the games. I think that was that Richmond game as well. But yeah, I'm just not sure where that point scoring comes from. And as a forward, in terms of a keeper, he's probably worth keeping if you own Lycett, so you can handcuff. But then, you have to hope Lycett gets injured just in case he does score well. Then at the same time, you'll have to play him on the ruck, not up forward, because he's your handcuff. So you almost need like a third ruck to go with these guys if you want to actually get them, maximise the potential out of them. And it's just rucks are a head fuck at the best of times. I don't know. I'm keeping Laddams because he's my handcuff to Lycett. But look, I don't know. If I was in a league where I didn't own either Lycett, I wouldn't be super disappointed if I missed out on someone like Laddams at a draft, despite what he showed in a few games. And I know his career average is quite good. I think he's ahead on the breakout tracker as well. But yeah, I just can't see where the scoring comes from as a backup ruckman, and I just don't see him getting a number one ruck spot just because he doesn't win the hitouts.
So my question is, and it kind of comes from a question I think we had on Facebook yesterday, is can Port not play Laddams?
I think,
if you're talking about that, say I've got Pete Laddams in the best 22 there, but if you put someone like Trent McKenzie and swapped him in there, McKenzie can go back, cover Aliir while Aliir chops out Lycett. Is that possible too?
The second half of the year we didn't lose a game and we played both of them. So apart from the prelim, obviously. So I think that pretty much answers the question. That's who we'll go with.
Okay.
But that said, like if Port do find themselves in a bit of a slump, you could play your Mitch Georgiadis up there as your kind of third tool and just go with one ruck and then use Dixon as backup or something like that. But then you take Dixon away from goals and it's hard. Anyway, we'll have to wait and see what happens.
So it's a no or it's a yes?
It's a yes if you own Lycett. It's a don't go too early if you don't, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is the new arrival, Orazio Fantasia. I suppose the big question on everyone's lips, especially the Port fans, is which version of Orazio arrives at Alberton. We talk about Ryan Burton being frustrating because of injury. You can definitely add Orazio to that list as well. He's played 19 games in a season twice, but has actually only played 32 games in his last 3 years. So 2018, he averaged 79 points from his 13 games, and that was probably his best year of footy easily. Notched up 3 tons that year and didn't have a game under 50, which is pretty good for a small forward. He continued to hit the ton a couple times in 2019, but then injury hit, and that's the last bit of good footy we've seen from him then. Look, if he's fit and Port see him in their best 22, I think he could be a real bolter to return to a 70 to 80 average, because I think he's one of those guys who plays better when the team's better. Look, because we saw him, 2018, the Bombers are going okay. Razio was going well. And if Port are challenging for the flag, I think he can be a nice addition to that side. Definitely if he can lock into that half forward flank spot or forward pocket, potentially even roam up a bit, be a bit of a connector, use that speed and his skills and break the lines, I think he could be a real dangerous fantasy proposition. The interesting thing is he's got back forward DPP, which is a genuine treat for a guy of his talent, and potentially doesn't have as much shine on him as he once did. So he could actually be a bit cheap in drafts this year, just purely because of his average from last year, and people are a bit worried about his injury history and that kind of thing. But I think he could be very handy. Definitely watch his role this preseason. Hopefully we get at least a couple, practice matches or something out of Port that we can report on.
You get one.
Maybe
2.
that scratch match thing.
Yeah, hopefully we can actually go look at it or something. Actually,
well, the 27th they're supposed to play it and it's closed too,
shit.
which is shit because I was going to go. But hopefully we can just find out his role this year. Hopefully he's flying and fit. But look, back forward DPP probably won't cost you a lot because his name's turned to a bit of mud in fantasy football terms. Could be one to have a look at.
The year where he averaged 79 for Essendon, he got up the ground a little bit more that year, didn't he? So that's the thing. I just don't see him doing that at Port Adelaide. I think he's solely inside 50.
Pocket.
Yeah, pretty much. And a goal sneak type thing. And that's the role they wanted to play. I reckon that'll probably help his injury longevity as well, not having to kind of build the tank as much and kind of just play in the forward 50. So I think that's where I see him playing. I think it's purely to free up your Rosie type. So I don't think... I personally don't think he's going to be a huge scorer, but might be someone that can just play every week and give you forward cover. Actually, he's named as a defender as well, isn't he? So that's pretty handy actually. That probably adds another little string to his bow. So as more cover there, I think he's handy in that respect, but he's not something I'd want to be starting on my field unless something really went wrong.
Okay. Next one, Hef.
Speaking of the guy who's going to free up, that's Connor Rosie. So
good segue.
He had an up and down sort of year, which was affected by injury as well. He averaged 54.7. That was 68.4 BCV for the year, down from his 72.6 averages in his debut year. He started the year like a house on fire, though, because there was a noticeable midfield bump early on, and his scoring reflected that. As the year went on, though, he moved back forward, and this is to do with this lingering foot issue that he had throughout the season, and Port really needed to lessen his load. So I think he missed almost a month of football. I think it was 3 games even. 3 games of football. So it just lingered and then kind of came good towards the end because he had an 81, which was 101.2 versus the Tigers in the prelim. But I just don't think he was up to his full potential just due to the injury of last year. So the recruitment of Fantasia, we've already talked about that twice now. It's pretty telling. They want him in the midfield, I reckon. But what I worry about is in December, after the season finished, when preseason has started going back, I think it was even maybe early this year, he was spotted in a moon boot around town.
Doesn't matter.
But the thing is, I haven't heard anything since.
Dyson Hepper was in a moon boot and he's training the house down.
Well, I think they just wear them like with any kind of foot issues, just as like recovery. It's just like a compression bandage type thing these days that you kind of wear if you're a hamstring type of guy that pulls them all the time, that sort of thing. I reckon you just do every little bit to like kind of get yourself up and down.
Professional athlete.
Yeah, for sure. Look, if his body's right, I reckon he's right for a breakout year. But if he doesn't spend too much time up forward, that is, if his body's not right, then he's probably going to spend more time up forward. But look, if that does happen, he'll keep his forward status, but I don't think he will do that. And if he does stay forward, he won't score as well anyway, so it's not really relevant. I have no doubt he's going to be a gun of the future, so I reckon just get on board now.
3rd year, baby.
Yeah,
it's coming.
Third year breakout. That's what it's all about.
Those Dersma, Rosie, Butters, we could see some massive bumps from them this year. I think, everyone knows that he's got so much quality. Let's hopefully he can pull it out and fantasy-wise as well. Now, Hef, you've got some honourable mentions here, and I think you've got the rest of the team. Like, there is 16 honourable mentions. So, I'm just going to sit out here and chill out for a while.
Yeah, fine. There's actually only 4 here, Kays, you idiot. But anyway, Xavier Dersma is the first one of my honourable mentions. Our listeners should know enough about him, by now. But he comes into his third year, should continue to develop and be a good scorer, plays the right style of game for being a good fantasy scorer, and he gets on the end of a few goals and doesn't mind the old bow and arrow as well. So that's my favourite thing about him. It's like,
if that was any other player, any other club, you'd call them a flog.
Yeah, probably. But but he's our flog, so it's
double
fine.
standards you have.
I love that little bit of theatre in there. It's
great. It is pretty cool. I do like that too.
Robbie Gray, he's the next one on the list. So he should see less midfield time, a bit like last year. I think he's still handy to have because he pops up and, every now and then he scores something pretty good fantasy-wise. But yeah, he's not going to be the fantasy scorer as he was. But I just think you might be able to get him in the draft pool this year. And if you can, he's going to play every week and will pop up every now and then. So might be a good streamer if the rolling lockouts continue this year as well.
Is it his last year this year, do you reckon?
Potentially, yeah. But that's why I've got written here, take what you can get from him in a trade as well, because it's probably the last time you've got to trade him. Yep. Sam Powell-Pepper, I think he'll be used more in the midfield this year. The issue is he's probably going to lose forward status and won't be a huge scorer. But look, it's good for this year because if you don't care about going forward and you're just chasing the flag, then that's a good thing. But if he doesn't hold it for the future, I don't know how much value he's actually got because I can't really see him being more than like a mid-80s to mid-80s scorer type thing. So that's fine as a forward. As a midfielder, you probably want a bit more. Yeah. And the last one on the list is Charlie Dixon. He's a reliable forward option if Port can maintain their performances of last year. Kicks goals. He was all Australian. He's a great kind of last forward option on your field, I think, as well. So anyway, that wraps up the Port Adelaide squad. I told you it wasn't too many, but anyway, Kays likes to exaggerate. We're what are we into the stream? 35 minutes in.
That was just the Port bit.
We might as well move on to Richmond then.
Good theme song.
Away from Tigerland,
all right, moving on to the Tigers. Kays, do you have a best 22 for us?
Do I ever, Hollywood? Hef. We'll start in the back line, obviously. David Asprey, Dylan Grimes and Jaden Short. Then Liam Baker, Nick Vlosten and Bashar Hooley. On the wing, Shai Bolton, Dustin Martin and Kane Lambert. Half forward line, Shane Edwards, Jack Rewalt and Marlon Pickett. Forward line of Jason Castagna, Tom Lynch and Daniel Rioli. In the ruck, Toby Nankervis, Dion Prestia and Trent Cotchin. On the pine is Jack Graham, Nathan Broad, Noah Bolter and Camden McIntosh. And the emergencies include Josh Caddy, Jake Arts, Jack Ross and Riley Collier-Dawkins.
Yeah, I tried to pick this one apart. Like, I really tried to find something that I didn't agree with this side, but I'm pretty happy with your choices here. Like, obviously, you probably mix up. Like, I think Noah Bolter probably starts on the field somewhere in defence. But yeah, look, I think you've actually nailed their probably best 22 down there as well. So I think you've done a good job with this one.
Thank you.
It's going to be interesting to see, in terms of injuries and stuff like that, if anyone comes in and out. But I think if their best is available, I reckon you've got it pretty much down pat there. I can't really argue with that one. Is there anything that went through your head when choosing the team? Was there anything you could have made?
Not really. Like, they're a funny side because it's just been so settled for so long.
Yeah.
You can't really mix up too much. Josh Caddy, potentially a bit stiff. You saw a bit of Jack Ross late last year. Unfortunately for Ivan Soldo, he's did his knee late last year, so he's not even in the mix. So it kind of picked itself in a way.
Scott Ridquist in the chat's asking about Jack Ross.
Yeah, you're going to talk about him a bit later, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
He's got to be close, but the thing is, I'll talk about it with Jack Graham in a second. Like, who's he taking a spot from?
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to some players here. I've got Toby Nankervis up the top here, and Nank the Tank is back in a big way. It looked like Ivan Soldo had replaced him as the number one ruck last season, but then Soldo did his ACL, and he's going to miss all of this year as well by the sound. So, that opens the door for Nank, and he's, back in play. In the past, Nank's been a great scorer. He averaged 86.9 in 2017, 89.2 in 2018, and even in 29, which was considered a down year for him. He still averaged 78.4, so it's not awful. It's not the worst news. Then he had 64 last season, which is a BCV 80. Now, usually that's the 2G4P status, but he ranked 158th. So we do talk about in the preseason, we talk about from anywhere from 150 overwards. So just, afterwards, just creeps in there. He rucked solo after Soldo went down, and then he averaged 71.8 from that point onwards. So that was 6 games without Soldo. That's an 89.8 BCV score. He had 106, which is 132.5 in the prelim against Port Adelaide. He will have the number 1 ruck mantle next year. We talked about that. He's a proven scorer, which we've mentioned. So if he doesn't get injured, he should get back to his best. I do worry about the future because I do think Soldo is very firmly in Richmond's plans, and they'll probably play in tandem at some stage in the future when he's back. And Soldo just proved himself last year to actually be a really handy ruck option. But I think definitely for 2021, Nank's going to be a player that can definitely win you some games.
Oh, it's his year this year. If you own him, you'll be licking your lips because he will get the job won out. The thing that always I find crazy for Nankervis is he's only 26. Like, he's still super young. Like, for some reason in my head, I kind of think he's like, I don't know, 28, 30, that kind of thing. But 26, so he's still got plenty of life left in him. It will be interesting to see what happens when Soldo comes back. But really, I don't think that's something you have to worry about this year. And, like, ruckmen need a bit of time to get their knees right and get jumping again. So if you got Nank, I think you'll be very, very happy this year, and he should be in for a big 2021.
All right, who you got next?
Liam Baker, who's who I'll talk about next. And he's a guy I was a little bit disappointed in last year. I thought he might have been a genuine breakout contender, but I just think he's going to be a bit of a steady back flanker. So, look, there's nothing wrong with that. He averaged 72 as a backman last year, and that's nothing to sneeze at. But unless he finds a heap of self-raising flower hef, I just don't think his average is going to rise. Get that Baker joke?
Oh, no. Yeah,
Jesus,
sorry,
gone over your head. Jeez, you are still hungover from Super Bowl on Monday. Look, he had the 1 ton in 2019, and that's what kind of got me excited. But he did up that to 2 BCV tons last year. The thing he does have, though, going for him is an exceptional floor. His worst score last year was a 46, which is a BCV 57. And for that kind of D3 to D5 role in your side, that's absolutely perfect. So I'm probably just a bit down on him more than I should be. A bit more emotion in this call because I thought he could have evolved into a bit of a Rory Laird type, that kind of a player. But
did he make you sad?
It didn't make me sad, just disappointed.
Oh, okay.
But look, with Basher still hanging around this year and Short looks to be the heir apparent as the ball mover from that half-back liner, I just don't think we'll see Baker really developing a heap this year, but he'll definitely play that helping hand role in 2021. I think he can draft him early because of that high floor. I'm just not expecting big breakout numbers this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens this year, see how Bash is going, and go from there. But look, could be one from next year onwards, but just a little bit flat. I thought I might have got a little bit more out of Baker last year.
Unless I'm getting him mixed up with the rest of that Richmond Mosquito fleet. He was a forward before this year, wasn't he?
He did play a bit of forward. He was a back forward status last year, and then he just played a bit of high half forward role 2 years ago, and then a bit of back. So he settled in that backman role kind of at times through the wing, but just didn't kind of evolve as I thought.
I think with the emergence of Short, which was kind of coming for a couple of years, along with Basher Hooley in there as well, there's not a lot of points to go around for him, I don't think. Be interesting to see after Hooley goes and see what type of what kind of ball he can pick up across that halfback line as well. I think that'd be interesting to see, but I'm kind of with you for this year. I don't see his numbers changing too much, but I still don't think, because there's not too many halfback flankers that don't have a place in a keeper league side, really, somewhere on the list. Yeah. So I reckon he's still worth picking up. Probably that mid to late kind of range. But
he's still currently on my list. And, like if I didn't have a good back line, he'd probably might be sniffing around that spot. But as I said, take him early because a backman with a high ceiling is awesome.
All right, let's move on to Kane Lambert. So he averaged 62.6, which is a 72.3 last season. That's down on his numbers from 2017 to 2019, where he had averages ranging between 85.2. Oh, sorry, I got them all written here. 85.2, 81.2, and then 86.6. So he probably suffered from Bolton moving into that midfield instead of his kind of role that he was kind of playing. Meant he had to start forward a little bit more as well, which is fine because I reckon it means he keeps forward status. So you'd be pretty happy with that. The thing is, he's 29 years old now, and he's not not really one to be looking at if you're building for the future. He's more of like a flag contenders kind of player at the moment. So you could get him probably a bit on the cheap as well because he's pretty serviceable. Now that brings me to my next point, Kays. Did you trade him out recently in our league? Or was that someone else?
Maybe a year or two ago.
Oh, okay. He was just traded in our league.
I think I got Burton for Lambert.
Oh,
maybe
okay.
A year or two ago.
Yeah, so there was just a trade in our league, I think, involving him because someone was laughing that they got him pretty cheap. But
Yeah. And he's an interesting one for me because I think he's almost like a Liam Baker. Where it's like, yeah, he might have a ton once or twice a year, but he's not really going to play too many horrible games. But at the same time, he's not going to, win you a lot of games at the same time. He's just going to be a pretty consistent, high floor kind of operator.
Yeah, so just to reiterate for Lambert, one to look at if you're gunning for a flag, but if you're going for the future, you could probably look elsewhere.
Yeah. Tend to agree.
Yeah.
Camden McIntosh is the next guy I'll talk about. He was one of my waiver wire pickup selections from last year who really delivered late in the season. He's probably one of the dictionary definitions of a super non-sexy pickup. But look, he's one that could just pay dividends, especially in your sides late in drafts. He missed the start of 2020 season, but found his way back into that Tigers side and really cemented his spot on the wing and played it beautifully all through to a grand final. He had a couple BCV 80s, he had a couple 80s, which turned into BCV tons, but was pretty consistent with his 55, which is a 69 BCV average last year. Look, he's a mid only, which doesn't make him a super amazing proposition, but if you just need someone to be mid cover for the rest of the year or slide into an M6, M7, depending on the strength of your team, he's one to look at because for me, he's really locked in that wing spot. He's only 26 and basically 9 times out of 10 he's good for a 60 plus. So a real lock and forget option on your bench. The Tigers seem to play a lot of Thursday, Friday night games as well early in the week. So always good for a bit of a loophole option if your league allows that too. So he's just one that I think he's got a bit of merit as a bit of a stress-free, take late kind of guy because he's not really going to be on anyone's hit list and a nice enough depth player for you, especially if you're contending. Yeah,
good cover, and if injuries hit, he's probably not the worst player to put on your last midfield spot as well. Yep. So a bit of a break glass in case of emergency option.
He's a real keeper league kind of stalwart.
He's a bit of me.
Just a guy that you just need to know you can rely on him when required.
He could be on the cover of the keeper league video game.
He could be.
Yeah,
he could be.
Potential. Anyway, let's talk about Jack Ross.
Yes, let's.
I think it was Scott was asking about him before. So, let's talk about him. There's a bit of interest around him. So, Scott's not the first person to actually bring him up. But over the last couple of years, we've kind of been looking at him a bit as well. Debuted in 2019 and scored 86 points on debut. Then had a top score of 92 2 weeks after that. So, that was his career best score to date still. Played 7 games in 2019. Also played 7 games in 2020, funnily enough, like sevens. But averaged 62 in 2019, but then went backwards in 2020, averaging 50.7. But still a 60.2.4 BCV. So, not too bad. I hope that's accurate. I could be wrong on that. But what was promising is when he did come back, he was thrown into midfield roles, but he's still back on the Richmond depth chart. So that's the main concern. When he did play, he did some nice things. So he averaged 8 CBAs, so centre bounce attendances for those playing at home, over his 7 games. And his best CBA game was 16 centre bounces. He did some nice work in there too. So, I thought there's a few clearances that were just super crisp on the back of his work. So, he definitely has got some potential. Top score last year was 65, which is an 81.25 AFL fantasy points with the BCV. Looking at the breakout tracker, he was miles ahead after his first season as well, but he's now plummeted to be 5 points behind the top 20 midfielders after 14 games, which is a bit disappointing. If you can get a defined role, though, I reckon he'll be okay, but I'm just not sure how much of a fantasy scorer he'll be. And just with Richmond, they don't play a super friendly fantasy scoring game as well. And there's a huge spread in the points as well and who gets them. So even, players like Dusty Martin, who's their best player by far, he's still not super reliable in fantasy. Look, I think in juniors, he was like much more of a super coach player, especially at underage level here in the TAC Cup. I think he was a 77 AFL fantasy average. Yeah, I've got it written here. 77 average in AFL fantasy, but 97 in Supercoach. So 20 points ahead in the Supercoach. So I think he might end up okay in the Supercoach realm if he does get a consistent spot. Not super sold in the fantasy unless Richmond's game plan changes drastically in the next few years. What do you reckon?
Look, I think there's something there. I am a current owner. He won't be on my list after keepers. But definitely quite keen on him. And looking back through last season when I did own him, what you did notice is he didn't get much time on ground. So his game numbers last year were 69, 69, 80, 69, 66, 71, 77. So not a high TOG player last year, and that's probably just because of the depth that Richmond have in that midfield. So one who I actually genuinely think could make some leaps and bounds. It's just with same with Jack Graham, who I'm going to talk about in 1 second. Just where's that chance coming from?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be this year, unfortunately, unless there's a heap of injuries. And do you hold someone or do you target someone like Ross late in a draft, potentially with next year in mind? I don't know. So
is he someone that needs to go to another club to get a game and be a better, reliable scorer?
I don't want to steal what I'm talking about with Jack Graham, but like you think about, I'll just go to my notes. You think about their midfield. So like the main midfielders are Prestia, Martin, Cochin, Edwards. Cochin and Edwards are surely in their last year or two. Does that mean that someone like Jack Graham, Jack Ross kind of jump into that spot? Shai Bolton rolled through there last year because he gives him a bit more speed. Do we see a Ross or a Graham come in to replace someone who's retiring next year? So
you're saying 2022 might be the year for him?
I think 2022 is a year you really want to have a look at Jack Ross and Jack Graham. If you can rookie Jack Ross this year, I'd go for it. If you can get him late and just see what happens, see if he plays some junk games towards the end of the year, that's my call.
You've pretty much melded the Jack Ross and Jack Graham into one, but do you still want to talk about Jack Graham?
I will.
Now?
I'm going to go on to Jack Graham. But look, he is another guy we've had a heap of questions about this week. And as an owner, I think we should kind of get together and start up a support group, because I was shattered that Jack Graham didn't go to the Crows in the preseason. I think there was a bit of sniffing around from the Crows to get him across there. And look, he signed another contract at Tigers, which is not great for fantasy, because I think Jack Graham's a genuinely good fantasy player. They just like to play him out of position on a wing, whatever they get in that side, but he just never plays that inside role. His best fantasy stuff is genuinely top level. And it's just really not his fault, which hurts. 5 out of the 12 regular season games, he had 70s, which are 90 plus BCVs. So basically half of his games he was going 90 plus, which is awesome. And then he just kind of gets stuck in a weird role. But I love he's a tackling machine. And just when he gets that chance to play inside, I think his numbers are going to rise because he's a bit more of a handballer, so he needs to be around the ball a lot more. So if you look at it, he's had 5 career tons. His PB was 146, which came with a 14 tackle game. So can tackle, can find the pill, just needs to be in the guts. And with Trent Cotchin out, that was kind of his chance, but Cotchin came back in. Yeah, look, as I said just before, like if Cotchin and Edwards are going to retire next year, potentially draft these guys for the future in mind, but it's just a really, really awkward year for Graham because he's going to be rated a lot higher than Ross, so you're not going to get him cheap, but the output's almost going to be a bit similar. So, tough one to recommend to keep, but he's got the goods, just needs the opportunity.
Just on the chat here, I'm copying it here. So Andrew Zanker says, anyone else think that Hollywood Hef's head is a little big tonight? And Tim Marsh says, clearly an extra large hat for Hollywood's Hef. Hollywood Hef's inflated coconut.
God, I love the listeners.
I'm just having a bad head.
I love the listeners.
Jesus, it's nothing.
Hollywood
nothing
is sticking for good.
Oh God, I can't shake that. So my nickname Hef, I don't many people know, is because I was always the fat kid at school, and like there was a cartoon I think where there was a big fat guy called Hef in it.
Rocco's Modern Life.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And so my dad always told me, like, don't react. If you don't react, they won't see it will get to you, and then they'll stop calling you that. So I just embraced it. I was like, yeah, fair enough. And then like it never went away. So now
lots of people don't even know that what your real name is. Everyone just knows you as Hef.
No one, Hef has nothing to do with my name. So there's so many people when I tell them my real name, they're like, how the hell do you get Hef out of that? But anyway, and now Hollywood is the same deal. I'm trying to just let it slide, but I don't think I'm shaking this one either. Something
going,
about
guys.
Can you just tell maybe under the surface it eats at me, even if I don't react? Maybe that's
why we keep doing it.
Yeah, that's it. All right, let's move on to St Kilda. All right, Kays, you got a B22 for us?
I do. St Kilda's best 22 for 2021. Backline, Ben Patton, Dougal Howard and Callum Wilkie. Half back line of Nick Caulfield, Jake Carlisle and Hunter Clark. Then we got Jack Billings, Jack Steele, and Bradley Hill. Half forward line of Jade Gresham, Max King, and Jack Higgins. Forward line, Paddy Ryder, Tim Membry, and Dan Butler. In the ruck, Rowan Marshall, Brad Crouch, and Dan Hannabury. On the pine, Zach Jones, Josh Battle, Seb Ross, and Jan Geary, with Jack Loney, Luke Dunstan, Jack Sinclair, and Ben Long as emergencies.
All right, so you got Jack Higgins straight into play.
Well, why'd they recruit him?
I don't know, because he was on the cheap. You can get him pretty much free. Wait a couple of years for him to develop. I don't
So
know.
who's playing over him then?
I don't know. There's not really there. The only other thing other player that I could really think of might be unlucky was Jack Sinclair.
Jack, yeah.
Yeah, another Jack. Some guy called Jack. Why isn't he
Look,
playing?
honestly, man, like looking at their team, their like half forward, flanker, wingman, small on baller list is just so long. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Luke Dunst can probably get a game. Most other clubs, like Jack Sinclair's good, Jack Loney's a great crummer, Ben Long's handy, but like I just don't know where you fit all these.
Well,
kind of
Dunstan's the
similar
one that
players.
could kind of come in there for Higgins as well, I guess.
He could, or it depends what they're going to do with Seb Ross, or
Yeah.
Jan Geary. He's probably really only in the side because he's the captain.
Thinking, is he
Yeah.
still the captain?
Well, I think so. So
I
do
don't
you
know if
pick him?
he's best 22.
Well, that's not our problem.
Yeah, I know, because I
Like,
think.
I can't not put the captain of the side
I
in the
know,
best 22.
but
But he was playing that like negating small forward role.
and
in a
I
way.
think
Yeah.
there could be a similar role for Seb Ross as well coming up too.
Look, it's going to be interesting to
So,
see because
yeah.
looking at their side, like they've got no excuses not to make finals, and challenge this
No,
year.
they're actually a pretty reasonable side, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, so like,
And-
and you're topping up with like Brad Crouch and Jack Higgins, who could be handy. So, interesting.
Did I hear
Interesting.
correctly that they're the oldest side in the competition?
Someone was trying to tell me that they were older than Geelong.
Or is their best team older or
No, I
something?
don't. But I think this is a long
just
story.
wrong.
I just think that it might be right, but
Yeah.
I just think that their younger guys or their good players are still young, whereas Geelong's good players are old.
Yeah. And there is a lot of good young up and comers
talent
in
in
there
there.
for
Yeah.
sure. All right, let's get on to the Josh, the Battle Axe, your man. I'll hit the your boy button for him, Kays. There he is. So the Battle Axe.
Oh, he wants to be, but he's let me down in the same kind of boat as Liam Baker. I just can't figure out what to do with Josh. As Hef's alluded to, I was an owner last year, but he's probably going to go back to the pool. The forward status almost got him over the line, but the main reason I just can't keep him is I just don't know where he's going to play. Like, he could play half back, he could play wing, he could be the second ruckman, he could be a key forward. It's just too bloody hard. It's probably the worst thing about being a genuine utility. He had a breakout season in 2019, averaged 68 points from 19 games and had 3 tons, which is pretty good for him. Not surprisingly, he notched up 20 touches in those 3 games where he tonned up. So when he's actually getting his hands on the ball and around it, he's scoring really well. But that was kind of when he was playing off a half back line, even a bit of a wing, because he's quite a mobile big guy. And that's where he's a dangerous fantasy proposition. But the issue is the Saints have all those positions sewn up now. This was, 2019 was before Cofford really made his mark, before Patton really came on. So a lot of the times last year he was thrown forward to help out Maxi King and Tim Membry's. But, King's kind of developed Membry, they play him deep. Do they keep Battle up there? Do they play Battle instead of Membry? I don't know. But he's probably more handy as a forward for that side, especially if Ryder's resting or something like that. So I just don't know. Like, he did manage a 91 game last year, which is a 113 BCV against the Dons. But that was once a game where he had the license to roam and picked up 18 touches and kicked the goal. So he did play a lot of low time on ground games last year because he was coming off a limited preseason. Genuinely one to monitor in the Amy series or the Amy game, just to see
It's not
his
really a
role.
series, is it?
The Amy game. Look, you could make a case for him because he's got forward status this year, but I'd be more inclined to probably draft him early to mid, because if he can get that fantasy friendly role, which we might hopefully find out in that one game, yes, I'd be more interested. But if he's just going to play as, third tall or something like that, I'm kind of waning interest.
I think he just needs a role. Like,
He doesn't have a role.
Yeah, just pick one.
He's
and
too
play him there.
utilitarian.
Yeah, and I think it's affecting him because he can't just get into a groove. He's got like the genuine tools to be a gun, but he just needs to play one role and play it well. And I think his best fantasy scoring role would probably be either, in defence or pitch hitting in the ruck as well, which he's done a bit of in the past as well. But
Yeah.
I just don't know what he's
that
going to
would
get.
almost be the thing. If Ryder got injured this year, they'd play him as a forward who comes in the ruck, and he'd actually score pretty well because he'd be around the footy, maybe 5 minutes, a quarter in the ruck. So
You just kill Rowan Marshall with scoring even further though.
fine, I don't care. I'm not a Rowan Marshall owner. But yeah, it's just a tough one. I really rate him as a footballer. It's just too hard to peg where he's going to play. So for that reason, I've just got to put him back in the pool and maybe have a look at him depending on where he falls.
Sorry, I'm just looking at Seb Ross's name.
Hit the Your Boy button.
Oh, fuck, I'll hit it. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, you sucker.
He's my boy, but still.
By the way, have we noticed that Hef literally has 50 boys and I've got 6 or 8?
Nah, it's because all the guys you pick are just crap and they're not worth talking about. See,
Maybe
I
they're
pick-
2G4P.
I pick, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, you're keeping
Bose, yeah.
you're keeping Harry Schoenberg. And who was the other
Harry's
crap?
my boy.
Who was the other crap one?
Luke
scoring?
Jackson's now on the
Luke Jackson.
50-50.
So 2 guys that are going to average
Well, I
30
brought in
for
the
you.
Zerha. Do I keep Lockie Ash? There's a few question
Might have
marks.
to talk about your trades this week, towards the end here. Anyway, Seb Ross, fuck, he just makes me sad just looking at his name. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to Seb Ross this season. It was almost like Steele and Ross have almost swapped roles in the midfield. So, Steele was off the leash and allowed to get more touches when Ross was doing more of the defensive work. But then some games he was just running around like he had no idea what he was doing. But look, to highlight some of his defensive work, he didn't let Lachie Neale get a clearance when they played Brisbane. It's the first time that's happened in 5 years. So, sorry, I think Kaz has found something funny on the chat. But yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a pretty interesting stat. Playing as a defensive midfielder, he didn't let Lachie Neale get a clearance. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So I guess he's doing his job for St Kilda, but obviously that's affecting his fantasy scoring, playing that defensive role. After breaking down 2016 with a 98.4 average that year, I'm not looking forward to what's just been said on the chat. He averaged 102, and then 107.3 in 2017, and 100, in 2018 he was also good. I didn't actually write down the score, but in 2018, people were genuinely looking at him like he was. 2019, they were genuinely looking at him like he was going to be a breakout superstar scorer.
Yep.
People were looking at locking him in Classic. That's how good he was going to be. The way he finished 2018. But then he went backwards in 2019, averaging 94.3. And then he averaged 59.2, which was a 74 BCV last season. On the back of last year, you wouldn't even consider him, especially Crouch coming in. In an interview he did recently with the media, he hinted that he's going to be used in different roles. He actually said that a lot of us are going to be playing second roles to do with the reduced time on ground. But, where else could he play? So, that's what I was thinking. Perhaps up forward, playing Geary's role, that pressure, defensive forward. Because he's shown how good he is defensively in the midfield.
Is he quick enough is my issue, is my question.
Probably not, but he's probably as quick as Geary. Yeah. So, anyway, if I own him in our keeper league, and unfortunately, I think I'll be dropping him back to the pool. Probably come back to bite me, though, knowing my luck. But what would you do if you own Seb Ross?
It's almost like owning Jack Graham.
Yeah.
You just...
At least Seb Ross will play every week.
Yeah, that's true. But what's the upside when you've got so many guys in front of you?
Yeah.
We were kind of excited about the fact that maybe Jade Gresham could be one of the next Saints midfielders, and then he's dropped down 10 rungs because Jack Steele's come on. Brad Crouch is in the side. So it's really hard. I think you kind of have to, but at the same time, as a fellow coach, I'd almost be like, well, Seb Ross has averaged 100 before. Is he a first round pick option?
He's averaged over 100 multiple times.
Yeah, is he a first round pick option?
In a draft,
because if he gets the roll back, that's big time scoring.
Yeah,
where do you draft him then, Hef? That's the question.
You
put him back in the pool. Where would I draft him?
I'd maybe go second or third round. I'd probably just want a chance somewhere else, me as an owner. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone else did take him first round.
He's down in the depth roster, and I just don't know if he's got another string to his bow up forward. That's my question. Whereas, Gresham or Billings or something can go and play that small half forward kind of role.
So my last keeper spot is probably going to come down between Seb Ross and Nick Blakey, who's pretty much there was a media release saying he's going to be playing in the midfield. Who would you take out of those two?
I'm keeping Blake. Yeah. Actually, keep Seb Ross, please. You should keep Seb Ross.
I'm taking Blakey.
Keep Seb Ross.
I told Doss the other week when we had a coffee that I'm taking Blakey. So, yes. Anyway.
Screw you, Doss.
Let's move on to your next player.
It is Ben Patton, the consistent and super underrated Saints defender who just flies under the radar while Nick Caulfield and Hunter Clark get all the hype. He played all 17 games last year, and apart from an injury...
Sorry, I just read that chat story. That was very funny. Thank you, Tim Marsh.
Apart from the injury, which was a concussion, I think, his 2-point game His lowest score was a 40, which is a BCV 50, which is fine for a D4, D5. So if you take that 2-pointer out, he averaged 55, which turns his average into a 69 BCV, which is fantastic for a D4 to 5. So look, he had two 72s. They were his two best scores last year, which are 90s. And guys like him with the high floor are the guys who can, just really help build your side and win your flags. Basically a bit of a Liam Baker, as we were talking about before. So I don't think he'll ever be as prevalent as someone like a Clark or a Caulfield, because he plays his role a bit more locked down at times, a bit more deeper. So it's just great because he's going to be consistent. You know what you're going to get. Yes, he might not get 100 pluses, that often, but if you can bank in a 50, 60, 70 most weeks, I think that's great for a D4, D5. So he never had less than 10 touches a game in any of those 16 games that he lasted. And he's definitely going to fly under the radar, but has lots of upside because he is only 22 and he's super consistent. So fun fact about Ben Patton, he finished in the Saints' top 3 for marks, intercept marks and intercept possessions last year. And they're all very, very fantasy-friendly attributes. So just ticks a lot of boxes for a mid-range pick. Just some good back cover, week in, week out trooper for your fantasy side.
I just want to read out that Tim Marsh comment because it is very funny for people who aren't on the stream. Tim Marsh says, owning Seb Ross is much like teasing Hef about his Hollywood nickname. It was fun up until him relating a story of childhood PTSD, and now it's just awkward. just to clarify, I actually enjoyed it. Like, it's really big. I've really enjoyed the nickname Hef. Like, my parents even call me Hef. Like, my partner calls me Hef.
Yeah.
Like,
no one calls
me Ryan, so don't worry about that. It's not PTSD.
And now everyone can call him Hollywood.
I actually quite enjoy it. Yeah, look, Hollywood's probably not even that bad, so in comparison. So
he likes it, everyone.
Yeah.
Who's next, Hef?
Oh, can I hit the Your Boy button again?
No.
In fairness, the last time you made me hit the Your Boy button,
That's because he was.
I wasn't going to press it though. I didn't have Your Boy written next to him, so I want to press it for this guy. So here it is, another Your Boy button. That is Nick Caulfield. So he's just outside of 2G 4P status. He'll get it this year, I feel. He averaged 62.1, which is a 77.6 BCV last season. Had some big scores in there, though. 97 versus Hawthorn in round 16, 85 versus Essendon in round 12, and 84 versus the Blues in round 84. All of these which are BCV tons. So that shows you his ceiling. I feel like I don't really need to justify him because we all watched him last year and saw how good he was.
Why are we even talking about him?
He plays a super fantasy relevant role as well across halfback. He's tall enough to intercept. He ranks elite for marks. He'll be a defender for life. If he's available in your league, just get him.
Yeah, that was like last year's news.
Yeah, I know.
He's so good, man.
It was similar to, I can't remember who it was before. He was just outside the 2G 4P status, so he's not in the top
Rosie
150.
or Butters, whatever you want to call it.
I can't remember. I don't think it was even. But anyway.
But like,
yeah.
oh man, yeah. If you don't own him, or if you're actually starting up a league, target him because he is only going to get better. And as you said, he's only going to be a defender.
Where do you go with him? D2, D3?
D2.
You reckon D2?
Yeah.
Jeez.
He'll get there. He'll get to be one of those really, really good defenders.
If not this year, yeah. Going forward, I can see it happening. Yeah.
He's always seems to be there for the switch.
Yep. Yeah, okay. That's a good spot to be. Yeah, he is actually, now you've mentioned it. Yeah. I can picture him doing that.
Yeah. Buy shares in Nick Caulfield.
Cool. Let's move on.
Next is Jack Higgins. So one of probably the more head-scratching decisions, I suppose, of the off-season is to why little Jack went to the Saints. Maybe it's because there were lots of other Jacks to hang out with. But yes, I know he's a lifelong Saints supporter. But come on, man, where are you really wanting to play? Like, I assume he left the Tigers to play in the midfield and he's gone to St Kilda, who have a shit ton of midfielders. So I just don't really know where he's going to go. And yes, I've got him in the half-forward flank, which I think he'll slot up there. But
can I just jump in there? Like, he doesn't look like a midfielder. He looks like a small forward. Maybe he's just embraced that that's the role he's going to play and he sees himself a spot for St Kilda.
Good point, Hef. But then he's got to fight against Josh Battle, Jaren Geary, Jack Loney, Jack Sinclair, Dan Butler, Jade Gresham, Dean Kent.
And now Seb Ross.
Seb Ross. Where does it end? Like, Jack, man, come on, switch on. But look, we've all heard the story that Jack Higgins was, the fucking Dane Swan of fantasy at a junior. But look, in 41 games, he's failed to ton up. So
that's awful.
98 is his PB, which is obviously close, yes. But we need to see more Jack Come on, mate. I think he could be a fantasy player, and look, he could be one of those guys like you were talking about before. This is a forward, Robbie Gray-ish for life, who's just a solid 80, 90 forward. Maybe he could be, but he just needs some midfield minutes, I think, to get some of those points up. You just can't get those points purely as that forward. So, look, the Saints have a lot of depth there. So, does he end up being the crumbing forward, the pressure forward? Like, he's almost just left Richmond where he was playing that role and just gone to the St Kilda where he's going to play the exact same role. And I just don't know if it's smart. Look, if you're a believer, potentially keep him. I just don't think I am with the probable role. Yeah. But I do think there's something there. Look, I'd be interested in drafting him, but wouldn't be keeping him. And I don't think I'd be taking him too high because I think there's a lot of risk. But, mid-ish.
I think he should play a bit more at St Kilda. I wouldn't say every week, but he will play a bit more. But, I'm just thinking back to with Jack Higgins. He was a first-round draft pick in our league to a Richmond supporter who was saying this guy is going to be the best fantasy scorer. Now, I'm a big believer in underage fantasy scoring. Don't get me wrong, but he's just a perfect example of how it's not a perfect science. And you probably should be looking at the kinds of players they are and their height and their weight and all that sort of stuff as well before you go jumping on some of these guys. That said, I'm still probably going to jump on every underage scorer that goes big. Of course anyway. But it's probably something that we need to, as coaches, just need to think about. But look, if he plays, he should improve a little bit. I just only see him ever as like a small forward type role. I don't think he's ever going to live up to those lofty heights. And didn't I say that last year, Kaz, that he never would, and I got shot down by you?
Yeah, because he was building. And I think he has something. But it's just like you could have gone to 16 other clubs and probably got more midfield time or played a more prominent forward role. Yeah. And apart from going to Carlton, who have the same amount of half-forward flankers, like could have got a good role at the Crows, could have got a good role at bloody Freeman. You could have gone a good role at anywhere, but you've gone to a team who's on the up, who's got a lot of players like you. It just doesn't make sense.
He would fit the Crows very well, actually. That was a good choice. I don't know. Yeah, he should have probably gone somewhere like that. Anyway, let's move on to the last player I have for St Kilda, and that's Brad Hill, who is B2P this season. So welcome back, Bradley. He went backwards in a big way last season. He averaged 93.7, 80.9 and 88.7 between 2017 and 2019. Then went at 58.3, which is a 72.9 BCV, playing at a new club. So I don't know. Generally expect a player to move to a club and go bigger, but he struggled to fit in a little bit. I feel there was a more competitive midfield than there was at Freo, but then also I think the shortened game times as well probably didn't help him because he relies on just really wearing his opponent down, and he just had less chance to actually do that. So he's an elite endurance player. So that means this year when we go back to full time on ground, I reckon he could see a little bit of a bump there. I don't think that said, I don't think I'd expect anything too much higher than like your 80s, maybe mid 80s in a real good year, because he's purely an outside player. He doesn't really have any inside game, and there's no scoring to be done on the inside for him. So he just takes all those kind of outside loose balls. At your M7 though, you'd probably take that for sure. So I'd expect him to bounce back this year. I just don't think you're ever going to expect like 100 plus from him. That's all.
Surely he doesn't get delisted by coaches.
No, I don't think so as well. But again, like because
he is, I'm jumping on him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, he shouldn't. But there might be some idiots out there, so who knows?
Never know. Yeah, look, I think the time on ground or the longer quarters factor is a good one for someone like Hill, and potentially there's a few guys in the competition who struggled last year because of that reason too. So, he'd definitely be on my radar if you were sniffing around. And look, I think even if you were starting up, a great like mid to late pickup for as you said, M6, M7, you'll get him cheap.
For sure. Just a few monitor players, just players to monitor for St Kilda. Ryan Burns is one, I think he was the standing room captain, and he was a really good fantasy scorer at underage level. He only went in the pick in the 50s though, so I'm not sure how highly he is rated overall and how well he uses the ball, especially in that St Kilda midfield. Might be tough for him to break in, but he does have the fantasy pedigree there, and he did debut last year as well. Didn't really put up anything, but one to just monitor and see how he's going overall. I think Paddy Ryder is a handy ruck option. He's someone I'll probably be looking at a little bit because of that Laddams Lycett situation, because I'm hoping that Laddams can somehow ruck solo, but then I don't want to have to play him with the ruck. I want to play him as a forward. So Ryder's probably someone who's going to be in our draft pool that I'll be looking at on the back of last year because he can still score pretty reasonably, but doesn't have much left. Max King is someone I just threw in there because, he played that one game he only played one game in his junior season because he did his knee, but he had 148 points on the back of kicking 10 goals. So, he had his first season last year and he was always going to struggle to kind of get going. But who knows if he's actually, half as good as what they say he is. He might kick some big bags in the future and equate to some good fantasy scoring. So, I don't know. That draft was just supposed to be a super, super, super draft, and he was the best key forward out of the lot.
The Kings are so exciting.
Yeah, God, I thought you were looking at me like you're an idiot.
Mate,
Hef.
nah, the
Yeah,
Kings, the Kings are exciting.
Yeah, and if they can actually, well, especially Max, if he can get to like where Ben is, and he's supposed to be rated than Ben, but more highly rated than Ben. I think this year he'll kind of get to Ben's status at least, if not better. So, yeah, I'm pretty pumped to see him. Mm-hmm. All right, that wraps up all the clubs we are going to talk about tonight. We'll get stuck into the membership options. So we released our midfielder and defender rankings over the last 2 weeks. They're out now. You can see our top 100 there. And we're doing our ruck rankings. We're recording the mini episode after this. And our top 50 ruck ranks come out on Friday.
Wow, it gets really shallow.
Like, how do you pick between like my last 5 rucks? You're basically picking like guys that are never ever going to play AFL fantasy.
Well, they might, but like in 6 years' time.
I doubt very much they're going to.
40 to 50 is just like there's tumbleweed rolling through.
Yeah, pretty much. But there's 50 there we can choose from, so we'll try to rank them. But yeah, I don't know how accurate they are going to be.
They'll be very accurate.
At all. All right, so as well as if you join up as a member, you got draftee numbers there, and there's a podcast on the draftees there. There's no prospectus this year, so you're going to have to get your draftee numbers from somewhere. Breakout Tracker, everyone's favourite resource, is up there as well. So if you're keen to get your hands on that, join up as a member. So basically, if you enjoy it, if you enjoy the podcast, appreciate the work we do. We put in a lot of hours each week into this. So if you just want to give back and say thanks for the effort, you can sign up as a member. Each week, we read out 5 gold members. So, Kays, you want to read them out this week? Some of the names here look hard.
Would love to. Dan Kovacevic, Josh Hutchinson, James Richardson, Paul Vincent, and Imran Church.
It was like Dan Kovacevic. Had no idea how to pronounce that.
Kovacevic, you got to just get it in your head.
Okay, cool. Thank you for doing that one. All right, but yeah, if you want to sign up, the links are in the description. And if you're keen to sign up, then we'd love to have you on board.
Big time.
Merch. I'm wearing a DT Talk merch tonight. The old Rocky bobblehead tee.
It's almost like your bobblehead.
Yeah, pretty similar size actually. Maybe that's why.
Now he's like a DT Talk guy. For fantasy, he's just wearing their merch now. He's not even like keeper legging anymore.
God,
Hollywood for sure.
The reason why they signed it, Warney, I think, DT Talk, that's under DT Talk. Warney signed up as a member of us. So I gave back by buying a T-shirt. I always like to give back,
You are a giver.
Yeah, so definitely. And then I was talking to Warney about it and he said, wear it on the Port podcast. So that's for him. Done. All right. But if you want to get one of our tees, we got merch on our website too. I don't think they sell as well as theirs do. But look, if you want a Keeper League Pod tee, they're the white versions of that. We're going to get some black stuff eventually.
Would anyone buy a Hollywood Hef shirt with a big Hollywood Hef head on it?
It's actually not a bad idea for merch, is it? And then like maybe some huge Elton John style sunglasses or something.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, that's pretty. I might have to come up with a caricature for that one.
Please do.
Do some artwork on my long service sleeve.
Yes.
Anyway, if you want a tee, head to keeperleaguepod.com to click on merch and use 20T, the code, and get one for $20. So, yeah. Anyways, podcast reviews. After last week, we've actually had a few come in. So,
yes, keep them coming,
Yeah,
though.
keep them coming because we've got 3 in the bank now, but we want to kind of have them banked up for the rest of the season. So, if you use an Apple device, please jump on board and give us a review. But anyway, this one's from ISO Walken. So, you want to read this one out, Kate?
Would love to. The Keeper League know their stuff and continually offer up quality insights into the chasms of fantasy AFL. Great listen, good banter, and consistent engagement with their listeners helps navigate the season ahead. Thank you, ISO.
It is actually a big part of what we do, is, get in touch with our listeners and make sure we try to reply to all the messages. I know we missed some comments on the chat, but we kind of go past things and it's hard to come back. But definitely try to get in touch with everyone. On that case, this is a good little segue. We've had in our Gold Members group a few questions as to your whereabouts on the Gold Members group. A bit quiet on that, and a few people want a few things explained, like rankings and stuff like that. So they're looking at getting in touch with you in the sanctum of the private group. They don't want it to be. So we need to make sure you're a bit more. Are you even in the group?
I don't know.
I sent you a link and the password earlier in the year, but maybe
the password's derogatory.
I think you saw the password and you refused to actually join. Is that
Hit
what
me
happened?
up on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter.
I have changed the password anyway, so it's a bit more positive, but
Good.
without giving away what the password is or about. But anyway, let's start moving on to the listener questions. All right, a whole stack of listener questions. We probably won't get to any in the chat because we just have so many in the comments here. We'll be here all night if we have to do them all. So anyway, we'll get stuck in, Kay. So the first question, who's it from and what is it?
It's from Sam Graffin. He's got a 12-team, 30-player keeper league, so big lists. He needs to delist 2 of the following: Curtis Taylor, Bailey Scott, your boy, Robbie Gray, Shannon Hearn, and Mark Murphy.
All right. So what do you think, Case?
Well, I've had a look. So, Sam, it really depends on where you're at. If you're going to contend this year, that makes a big part of my decision. So I think Shannon Hearn, Robbie Gray are probably in their last years, and Mark Murphy would be close, if not next year. So, look, if you're not really around the mark, that's probably something to take into account. I think you delist Hearn. I think this is definitely. I think it's his last year. There's plenty of good backs around, unlike previous years, so you can get someone else in. And I'd probably delist one of Curtis Taylor or Bailey Scott. Depends on who you think has less potential. I'd probably side with Curtis Taylor, but I know Hef, you'd probably side with Bailey Scott.
Yeah, well, my thoughts are pretty similar to yours if you're going for a flag. The only thing is I'd probably keep Hearn. I'd probably delist Robbie Gray and Mark Murphy if I'm going for the future, to be honest. Just because Hearn I see is probably the most likely out of those 3 to, well, Mark Murphy, diamond does in midfield. He could get 80, but who cares? It's midfield. You get another one in the draft, no worries. I don't think you'll get a defender that will score as well as Shannon Hearn does. I think you'll definitely get a forward who will score as well as Robbie Gray does this year, and probably someone younger with more potential as well. So that's the only reason why I'd probably keep Shannon Hearn out of those. But yeah, I don't know. You'd be spewing if you missed out on a Bailey Scott or Curtis Taylor breakout. And Curtis Taylor's scoring really well, so I think you have to keep him in there. But it's hard. But yeah, I think if you're going for the now, I'd probably delist Bailey Scott and Mark Murphy at this point in time. But yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, anyway.
Right. At Toddman84, thoughts on Josh Battle? Would you keep him, Rayner, or Riccardi?
No, this might be controversial, but I think Rayner for mine is who I'd keep out of those 3 because he's more chances of getting that midfield run going forward. I'm not expecting huge things, but I think he's the most likely out of those 3 to average 80 plus for a consistent period of time throughout his career. Battle, who knows what his role is and where he's actually going to end up. Riccardi is going to be a key forward. He's going to take some really good defenders in his time. I think Rayner will eventually move into the midfield somewhere in his career. And I think he won't be a huge scorer, but I think he can average like 80 plus, which I'm not sure the others can.
I don't know if there's a right answer for this one. I think they've all got their pluses and negatives.
Yeah.
Riccardi.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that because you love, even though you're not hot on Damon Greaves, you still want to get around Riccardi after his 5 games.
Yeah.
It's just no logic to it. It's just what you want.
Gut feel.
I'm just looking at the chat here. Dan Callary suggested, can we get Ben Keys tees?
Hell yeah, we can.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea as
and
well.
And Hefluck on his knees apologising to Ben.
I've got plenty of time over the next 5 weeks. I'll do some drawing and see what I can come up with.
I want some grovelling Hef.
All right, next question. Will Connor Rosie spend more time in the midfield this year? Yes, let's move on. That's from Needs a FUIC, so thank you for that one.
At Ross2468, there's been a lot of talk about Butters and Rosie, but how do you see Dersmar's progression for this year?
Kind of touched on this as well. I think he'll continue to develop. He has the potential to be just as good as the other 2, I think. He's a genuine outside player, but unlike most, there's kind of really outside players, he loves getting on the end of the goals, which is going to help him boost that scoring a little bit. You can see him being a 90-plus average midfielder at some stage, so that's why I would go. That's why I'm happy with this progression. I think he'll go okay. Mm-hmm. Stephen 9205,000,076. Sorry, you've got a lot of numbers in your name there, but would like to hear your thoughts on Thompson Dow. Yeah. Can he eventually cement a spot in that midfield? Is there a long-term fantasy value there?
Well, he's played 2 games, had 2 kicks and 14 handballs, so that's the ratio that you just hate to see.
And he's a Dow.
Yeah, I know. So he always lets you down through forever.
Dorsey's just smashing that unsubscribe button.
Look, I don't like that. But look, honestly, like how long are you talking in terms of fantasy value? You've got like Marlon Pickett who needs to play a bit more time in the midfield. You've got Jack Ross in the wings. You've got Collier Dawkins. You've got Paddy Nash. I think there's a few guys ahead of him in the pecking order. And they're not going to be gifting games to him this year. So he's not in my thoughts at all. Sorry.
All right, Dan K101. What are your thoughts on Ryan Burns as a long-term keeper prospect? Long-term, he has potential? ?
Potentially. You kind of touched him in your little recap there, but look, he's just so far down. Like you got Dunstan, Sinclair, Bytel, who we didn't mention before. They're not getting games out in the midfield, and I doubt Ryan Burns will this year. You're going to have a deep list to hold him, I think.
All right, next question from Harley Philpcase.
Yeah. Who would you keep out of your boy Carly Amon, Sam Pepper, or Ryan Burton for your last keeper spot?
Short term, I reckon you keep SPP because he's got that forward status. But I talked about it before. I can't see him playing forward for too much longer in his career. I reckon he'll go back to being an inside mid, especially after Boak and Rocky kind of finish up. Long term, I think you should keep Burton because if he can get his body right, I think he'll be an absolute gun. It's just a big if he can get it right. I think Carl Amon's just a dime a dozen player. You can get a million players like him in any draft. So, yeah.
But you can delist him and pick him up basically round
definitely.
2 or 3 or 4 in the draft again next year.
So it's just like you're not even using up a keeper spot and still getting like an extra keeper, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think that order. So SPP short term, Burton long term, Amon, put him back.
Put him
get
back.
Play like him.
Put him back.
Yep.
Zach Schutt, I think we've answered your question in return to Jack and Seb Ross so far on the pod.
Yep.
Dylan Brooks, what's Brad Hill's range this year, Heffy? You did touch on him, but what do you reckon he's going to score?
I think he'll average around 82. That's what I think he'll average this year. So, yeah, anywhere between the 80 and 85 range, I think, is Brad Hill's average this year.
As our Port correspondent, Heff, Paul Milne asks, what's the status of Willem Drew? And how many of the following will never, ever return from the fantasy abyss? Brad Hill, Seb Ross, Bashar Hulu, Sam Mays, and Hamish Hartlett.
Yeah, Willem Drew had another one of those niggly foot injuries that wasn't good last season. Had surgery on the eve of the season, going into the year, and then sat out the whole year in the end because it just wasn't coming good. I haven't heard any reports on how he is going. He's just a name I have not even thought of up until today. I guess for the inside mid role before he's going to be any kind of sort of fantasy relevance, he's kind of waiting in line for Boak and Rocky to finish up as well. But I can see him if he's fit. I can see him playing next year because he plays a forward mid role as well, which is pretty similar to what Ebert did last year. So there probably might be a spot there for him if he can get it, but I'm not sure if he takes it straight away. Let's just go back to the players who will never return from the fantasy abyss. Was Basher Hooley ever?
Bashar's not in the fantasy abyss.
I was going to say, he'll be fine if he's healthy. Hartlett and Hill,
Hartlett was very consistent last year.
But they were never really in fantasy, the fantasy realm where they were scoring so well as well. So I don't know. Hartlett and Hill will be serviceable. The others are probably pretty cooked, I reckon. But apart from Hawley and Ross, the others haven't really been huge scorers than what you'd realistically expect from them anyway.
I can't see Sam Mays as being relevant.
Oh, no, God no.
Seb Ross, really role dependent. And I'm confident on a bit of bounce back from Brad Hill, but will we see huge scores? I'm not too sure. I think he's more that 85-ish, 90 kind of guy.
Yep.
Last question for the night. Adam Clayton. After a great finish to the year last season, how much more improvement do you think Will Setterfield will have?
Look, I don't know if I'm sure. I'm not sure if he goes too much further because you've got Cripps who I expect to bounce back. And you've also got Walsh who's everyone's really expecting to step up in the midfield. I think he kind of plays that third string, that kind of third bow there. So. Yeah, I just wish he kind of did that earlier on, like last year when he had the forward status as well. But yeah, to answer your question, I think he goes pretty similar to what he produced at whatever he averaged for the last half of the season is probably what he'll average going forward. I don't think he's got too much of a level to go. Now that I've said that, he'll probably go out and average 90.
But he was pretty solid last year.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
definitely.
I think you take that, and potentially there is some room to build on that because we haven't really seen the best of him through injury. So
yeah, for sure.
One to keep an eye on.
All right, that's a wrap, Case. So
done.
Thanks for joining us tonight. If you're keen to support us, get around us on our socials at Keeper League Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our YouTube channel is growing actually since we've been doing these streams. So
let us know which cartoon you want Hef to draw.
Yeah, for sure. Or just want a big caricature with me with a huge head, looking like some Hollywood celebrity in front of the Hollywood sign. Maybe.
Is that like South Park episode where someone stands, dad's head just explodes?
I don't know. That, he's not talking about with Mr. Mac. He takes him to LSD and his head just floats away.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's pretty old school, Kaz. I'm surprised you know that one. It's from probably 10, 15, probably about 20 years ago.
That's probably the last time I watched South Park.
It's very different nowadays, Kaz. It's a bit more, there's less crass and more political. Actually, still very crass, but it's very more political.
Boy.
Anyway, cool. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for getting in on the stream. And we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
See ya.